This means something to me. This means something to me that Drake and Kendrick never could.
Nickelodeon is the most beloved kids channel ever, with only a few competing networks. All of those networks, especially Nickelodeon, has had their high points and their low points. I have already discussed in detail the lowest point of Nickelodeon.
Which is because the 2010 to 2020. Now I say I watched Nickelodeon in the tens. In the tens, I watched Nickelodeon from 2010 to 2017, and then that's when I started getting Roku and shit. But one thing I could say about the 2010s is that era was low-key good and people hate it because, I don't know, they're just not up with it yet. You know, they're not witty, quirky. Bro.
That being the decade of the 2010s. But it made me realize it was really easy to pick out the worst era of Nickelodeon, but not as easy to pick out the best era. When you look at the two obvious answers, the 90s
was not
or the
that
2000s,
good.
They both boast amazing shows, one after the other, but neither of the decades stick right out as the better one. Today, I'm going to analyze the three...
The 90s era is so overrated? Bro, I watched an episode of Rugrats, I was sleeping like at the 15-minute mark. Rugrats is so mid, Cat Dog is mid, any of those series, bullshit. It's not compared to the 2010s. The 2010s of Nickelodeon is way better than the 90s era of Nickelodeon. Argue with a wall. This is how I look at y'all niggas when y'all try to see some like that. This shit is not good.
3.5 decades of Nickelodeon to figure out which one is the best. Disclaimer, I'm talking about cartoons only, because I have such little knowledge about most of the live action shows. Unlike my other videos, I'm not going into this one with a clear answer to which one is superior. I grew up watching both the 90s and the 2000s, despite growing up in the early 2010s, so I don't have a particular bias for either one. So first, the 90s. It is regarded as the golden era. It may seem like the obvious
I gotta give it to Cartoon Network,
when you see shows like Jimmy Neutron...
If we really talk about the big three, who's the big one out of the big three, I gotta give it to Cartoon Network. Bro, you can watch regular show in Adventure Time, and then like 15 minutes later, it's 8, and then an episode of Dragon Ball Z Kai will hop on, bro. That's fire. And then King of the Hill, as a little kid, I didn't watch King of the Hill. It low-key scared me. It was like uncanny for some reason. But I started watching King of the Hill. King of the Hill is great. King of the Hill is a great series. Why wasn't I with it when I was a little kid? But like now, that's looking good.
Neutron and Danny Phantom in the 2000s, it becomes conflicted. The first Nicktoon is Doug from 1991. Can't say that I'm a fan of this show very much. I don't really like the typical ordinary life shows that are slower paced. If I'm going to watch cartoons, I want to watch something that doesn't really exist. Rugrats is regarded as one of the best cartoons ever, so this is definitely a point for the 90s. This show began to introduce the overall tone of Nickelodeon. This show began to teach the world that these cartoons weren't like the Saturday morning cartoons. Not only did this show change the course of Nickelodeon, but I believe it kind of changed the course of the entire cartoon world. And speaking of changing the cartoon world, Ren and Stimpy. It was the show that made parents really question if their kids should be watching this. Ren is super abusive to Stimpy, and the gross-out humor was revolutionary, I think in a bad way. It hadn't really been done much before this show. The entire theme of the show was disturbing. I watched most of it as a kid, and I definitely did not like the super dark parts. Personally, I don't think this has aged well, but this show is iconic to everyone else. Everybody knows Ren and Stimpy.
I did see a clip of Ren and Stimpy where Fly was getting his wings fucking off that bitch, and he was like agony pain. I did see that. I was like, yo, what fucking show is this? And it was Ren and Stimpy. I was like, this is what niggas is hyping up. This is what's supposed to be the best era of Nickelodeon. The 90s, the golden era. Hulk Hogan, brother. Nigga, that shit weak.
Stimpy, and it helped pave the way for so many cartoons. Rocko's Modern Life, Cat Dog, and Angry Beavers are more amazing and iconic shows. They helped further mold Nickelodeon into what it is and what it would become. They were funny shows with humor that had yet to be seen in other cartoons. The fact that they had a show about a cat and a dog that were connected together really made you go, wow, they really will make a show as wacky as possible, and make it fantastic. The lesser talked about shows, Our Real Monsters, Hey Arnold, and The Wild Thornberrys, are still fantastic. I definitely do not like Hey Arnold, but I am in the minority. Our Real Monsters did somewhat feel like they kept trying to make a better show than the last one and then failed with this one. It's a little too repetitive. Hey Arnold is like another Doug, the everyday life stuff that I do not like. The Wild Thornberrys I don't like because of the nasty Klasky Chupo art, but is overall a fantastic concept. The worst show of the decade is Rocket Power. Again, it's one of those typical life shows but with an extreme sports theme. This is definitely one of those forgotten ones. Rocket Power is just one too many of those ordinary life shows.
But Cold
and
Kid
finally,
Next Door
releasing
clears.
at the very end of the decade, SpongeBob SquarePants. The best and most iconic show ever made. I mean, maybe ignore the recent seasons. I'm talking about the first season, because that was the only one that aired in the 90s. That first season is the best animated content you'll ever see. Tea at the Tree Dome, Ripped Pants, Pizza Delivery, Home Sweet Pineapple, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, Pickles, Jellyfish Jam, Sandy's Rocket, SB129, Suds. Do I need to continue?
No, you
Looking
don't,
at the
my nigga.
cartoon
No, you
side of
don't.
The 90s, there really wasn't a bad show. Rocket Power is the worst, but even that wasn't horrible. Of the 12 shows in this era, only 4 aren't the best, but that means 8 of the shows are good, and some of those I would even say fantastic. SpongeBob was revolutionary. Rugrats was revolutionary. As much as I don't want it to be, Ren and Stimpy was revolutionary. In their own ways, even Rocko's Modern Life and Cat Dog were revolutionary. So the 2000s have quite the impressive decade to beat. This era has 16 shows.
This show
so
is
a
fire.
lot of room for fantastic stuff, but also a lot of room to suck. Before I mention the new shows of the decade, SpongeBob has to be talked about again. For the first half of this decade, SpongeBob was still in its peak. More of those fantastic episodes we all love and remember came from this era. After the movie, it began to degrade a little bit, but still, the level of quality in those episodes does not compare to...
You wanna know my take of why cartoons is going down the fucking drain, boo-boo? They got 20-year-olds writing cartoons and shit. 20-year-old lesbians with Kevin Owen haircuts and shit, making cartoons and shit, trying to make it funny. But I'll tell you, one of the series that those 20-year-old lesbians did hit a gem, Star versus the Force of Evil. Pickle and Peanut. Yeah, Star versus the Force of Evil and Pickle and Peanut. Those are fire.
Anything else Nickelodeon has put out. Starting off, not great, As Told by Ginger. It's like Doug.
Pickle and Peanut is really a
bad,
good show.
And it's certainly watchable, just not really my type of show. The next show released was Fairly Odd Parents. Butch Hartman came in with this absolute banger. It never got to SpongeBob level, but it certainly was a close second. And then Invader Zim right after Fairly Odd Parents. It's a creative and sometimes disgusting show. Some episodes are disturbing in concept, but in actuality don't seem as harsh. Chalk Zone, yet again, amazing.
When I think of Invader Zim, there's always like a core memory in my brain with that show. I remember watching. We had a Cox cable box, right? And the Cox cable box, this is when it had the time on it. I remember sitting down right in front of the TV watching Invader Zim on Nicktoons, right? My mom asks me what the time is. It's 11:14. I say 11:14. She got so mad at me that I said that shit. I was like, how are you gonna get mad at me that you never taught me, bruh? How you gonna get mad at me for that? And I was like 5 years old at the time too.
Show after another amazing show. This show is not talked about very much. It has a great plot and honestly is pretty comparable to Fairly Odd Parents in some respects, but it falters from genericness. After you've seen 10 episodes, it feels like you've seen them all. Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius, and Danny Phantom, 2 more fantastic shows, rivaling Fairly Odd Parents for that second place spot for this era. Jimmy Neutron is another show very similar to Fairly Odd Parents.
Jimmy Neutron was a banger.
Most episodes revolve around a new gadget Jimmy has made, which really lends itself to infinite possibilities. Danny Phantom is more akin to a superhero show. There are tons of recurring villains constantly pestering Danny. Ultimate Enemy is one of the all-time best Nickelodeon episodes. My Life as a Teenage Robot, another really great show that was overshadowed by the other great ones. Again, it's a lot like a superhero show. There are episodes that are definitely better than the others. Some of them can kinda run boring. All Grown Up is the odd one out of this stretch of shows. It's Rugrats but grown up, and I can't stand this show. The characters lose their charm when they're grown up. And then after that one comes Avatar. The Last Airbender, regarded as one of the best animated shows ever. I can't disagree. Some of the most interesting, compelling, and awesome storytelling, period. And then halfway through this era, it starts to lose it a bit. There was a span of 4 shows that got 1 season, and I think all of them deserved at least a second one. Cat Scratch, The X's, El Tigre, and Attack of the Power of Juju. Cat Scratch isn't the best. The X's is worse. El Tigre is really good, and then Tack
And
leaves
then
a
you
lot
watch
to be
Legend of
desired.
Korra, you see
Even
that
though they weren't the best of shows, they should have gotten
Young
another
Sam?
chance to
Is that
prove
who I
themselves.
think it is?
After that span,
No way. Is that who I think it is?
another 3 shows
I can't
got
say I
cut
have,
short
though,
with
nah.
only 2 seasons. I say cut short as if it was a bad thing. No, it definitely was not. Back at the Barnyard, The Mighty Bee, and Fanboy and Chum Chum. Back at the Barnyard has its moments.
Oh, hold
and is
up. But like it
quite
was like
funny
a,
sometimes,
you know, like a.
but falters from lackluster stories. The Mighty Bee, I haven't watched much of, but I don't really care for it. And the dreaded Fanboy and Chum Chum. It ranks up there with Sanjay and Craig and Breadwinners. This show is 50% of the reason Nickelodeon is where it is today. And with that, just about rounds out the era. I don't need to spend too much time on this one, as I already have an entire video on it, which you should go check out. But I'll give a quick overview. The 2010s started out rough with the release of Planet Sheen, a completely unnecessary spin-off that relied way too much on unfunny humor. One mediocre show after the other. Tough Puppy, Robot and Monster, Pig Goat Banana Cricket. They were watchable, but they were far from the best shows. Without a doubt, this decade has the worst shows.
I'm not
from
that type of
Nickelodeon.
guy.
Sanjay and Craig, Breadwinners, and Bunsen is a Beast. These are all disgusting, poop humor shows that wanted to gross you out. Not a whole lot to like about them. There's an entire episode about...
You think of the 2010s of Nickelodeon, if you remember, my nigga, right? If you remember the 2010s of Nickelodeon, you gotta say that shit's not bad. I'd never understand it why old niggas hate on some shit, bro, just because they got fart humor. Sanjay and Craig is top 3 Nickelodeon, and it always will be. And that's facts, my nigga. That's facts. The 2010s is elite. Yeah, that's facts, bro.
Sanjay getting pregnant with a fart. Breadwinners was even worse.
Crazy.
Bunsen is a Beast is the most generic show known to man. You've already seen the show before you've seen the show. There were very few good shows in this decade. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and... well, that's about it. The flagship shows, SpongeBob and Fairly OddParents, began to severely deteriorate and lose quality. There was hope for the decade to be saved by their new flagship, The Loud House, but that got bad quick. By the end of the decade, the only thing really surviving was watered-down, over-animated SpongeBob and repetitive Loud House. Fairly OddParents, along with every new show, was canceled before it could prove itself. Looking at you, Harvey Beaks. Suffice to say, this decade was a low point for Nickelodeon, and currently the lowest point. Barely any memorable shows. Terrible poop humor, dropping views. They didn't know what to do. Which leads us to the current era. Okay, I can't fairly say this era is good or bad because it's far from over. We're not even halfway through, but it's not promising. It's clear Nickelodeon still doesn't know what to do. This entire decade so far, along with the last couple of years of the previous one, are full of reboots, spin-offs, and licensed IP shows. The decade starts off with a pretty generic, it's pony. It's whatever. It's boring from the handful of episodes I've seen. There was Glitch Text, which I have not seen, but gets tons of praise online. Middlemost Post, which is awful. Flashy animation, unfunny, and I don't think the concept is executed well. Rock, Paper, Scissors is a breath of fresh air. It has better episode plots and funnier sequences than most of the shows from the past 10 years. That's it so far for original shows. The amount of them isn't hateful. What is hateful is the overflow of spin-offs and shows based on other IPs. Camp Coral is quite the step down from SpongeBob, which already really sucks at this point. It retcons past episodes of SpongeBob, and in general doesn't really change the dynamic that much of regular SpongeBob. The Patrick Star Show is especially heinous. Why does this need to exist? Patrick hosts his own talk show. The worst part is literally all the characters from SpongeBob are in this show. Patrick is a fantastic side character, not a lead character. Also, again, retconning episodes of SpongeBob and replacing his whole family. Nickelodeon, I'm gonna give you an idea. You ought to do a spin-off of this show and call it the SpongeBob SquarePants Show. Just make it as redundant as possible. The Rugrats 2021 reboot is, again, a step down from normal Rugrats.
God,
I've said this
damn,
before, but the
14
only
minutes.
positive thing from this is that kids today
Damn.
at least get a taste of past shows. Fairly OddParents, A New Wish, is definitely the best reboot. But I just don't understand. If you're gonna bring back every character, why not just bring back Timmy and just do what Rugrats did? And then the other category of shows, the licensed IPs. None of these shows make sense to me. Star Trek Prodigy, Big Nate, Monster High, and Transformers Earthspark are all shows based on other properties. Star Trek is the weirdest one to me. It does not at all feel like Nickelodeon. It's starting to look like Nickelodeon is losing its sense of identity. The older shows, SpongeBob and Loud House, need to end. SpongeBob...
What the hell they had BBLs to SpongeBob? They got fish charge throwing it back. Yo, I might have to start watching SpongeBob again, my nigga.
Especially. They just celebrated their 25th anniversary. Not
Never
many
mind.
shows do that. SpongeBob is no longer SpongeBob. The characters do not act like themselves, and the stories no longer have the charm of the old episodes. There has been such a shift that doesn't even feel like SpongeBob anymore. This decade is shaping up to overtake the 2010s title as the worst era. But I don't want to make any claims like that yet, because a show could come along that surprises everybody and fixes the decade. After the overview of all 4 of the eras, it's pretty easy to say the 2010s are the worst, and 2020s so far aren't the best. And it obviously leaves us with the 90s and the 2000s. Everybody that has clicked on the video knew it would come down to these two. I have made my decision. The best era of Nickelodeon is...
the 2000s. Yeah, there you go. Alright.
The 2000s. I know it's sacrilege to say the 90s aren't the best era. But just hear me out for a second. Let's compare them show by show. The best show in the 90s...
El Pollo Loco, I ain't gonna hold you. Did I care about Mexicans before this show? Not really. But I watched LT Gray. I was like, you know what? I could respect my Mexicanos, bro. They made this nigga, they made him look cold. He was a wrestler and
Let's
shit.
compare them show by show. The best show in the 90s was SpongeBob. The best show in the 2000s was also SpongeBob. I think it's unfair to give all of SpongeBob to the 90s, because the 2000s spawned a majority of the top tier and iconic episodes. Let's just bypass that for a second. The next best... Rugrats, compared to Fairly Odd Parents.
Bullshit.
I definitely watched a whole lot
Jimmy
more
Neutron
Fairly Odd
better.
Parents, and only a fraction of Rugrats. But I still have a hard time seeing the comparison. For the sake of the argument, let's just say it's a tie, because the other shows will just further prove my point. The 90s third best show, I would say Rocco, but I think the majority would say Ren and Stimpy, so we'll go with Ren and Stimpy. The 2000s third best, Avatar The Last Airbender.
Yeah,
is there
low-key.
really a competition?
Low-key.
Rocco to Jimmy Neutron. Okay, Rocco
Jimmy
might
Neutron.
win this one. Cat Dog to Danny Phantom. Danny Phantom is better. It's barely a contest. Angry Beavers to Invader Zim. Not a chance Angry Beavers beats Zim.
Bullshit!
Aubrey Monsters, Hey Arnold, Wild Thornberries. Can any of them match up against My Life as a Teenage Robot? Maybe Our Real Monsters might tie, but Teenage Robot is better than Hey Arnold and Wild Thornberries. I haven't even mentioned LT Gray or Chalk Zone. Maybe you don't think this is a good way of looking at it. Maybe you look at the 90s run of shows and the lack of garbage, and then compare it to the 2000s, and then definitely see the garbage. Fanboy and Chum Chum, the X's, the Mighty Bee. Yeah, those don't compare to the worst of the 90s. I have quite the sneaking suspicion that some people disagree with this, but I'm standing my ground. I think the 2000s are actually much better than the 90s. SpongeBob was at its peak. Game-changing shows like Fairly Odd Parents, Jimmy Neutron, Danny Phantom, and Invader Zim were airing. It had flaws, the most glaring being Fanboy and Chum Chum, but there are less worse ones being the X's, the Mighty Bee, and Attack on the Power of Juju. Even though I'm saying this era is better, we have to remember, without the 90s era, the 2000s era wouldn't exist. Thank you all for watching this video. Make sure you subscribe for more awesome content like this.
Man, oh man. Man, oh man. You just gotta clap it up for the nigga. Great video, great video. Great stills, nigga. I'm stealing that bitch. I'm posting that bitch on my YouTube. That's mine now.